the bigger my smile is based off of getting to do 2 episodes today of Inchstones. And I didn't get a chance to do yesterday's because it was Father's Day, and happy Father's Day to every single one of you out there who's a father. The sacrifices that you make, the things that you do that people don't see. I want to congratulate every single one of you, and I want to prop up the mothers also, because honestly, I joked on Mother's Day, and I sent out a picture of all my buddies, and I said, you know, if it wasn't for us, then this day wouldn't be possible. And it was tongue-in-cheek and it was joking, but I go back the other way. And for all of you mothers out there, I want to thank you. I want to thank you, especially my wife, Brooklyn. She is just absolutely phenomenal. She made my day the absolute best. I mean, we got up in the morning, we went to church, we went to a little breakfast afterwards. We got a chance to go and look at some cars with my daughter. They took me bowling. Like, this was the greatest day ever. But then at the end, I was an absolute idiot, and I think I ruined the whole thing. And probably the only thing that my kids will remember is me getting mad at the end, because I asked my daughter to do some dishes, and I thought I was kind of I didn't realize I was keeping score, but I was keeping score. And I didn't realize that all the great things that had happened throughout the day, and I was connecting with my daughter, and we were laughing and all these things, and I asked her to do the dishes. And when I asked her, she just dropped on the ground and just made this, you know, little stink about it. And she was, you know, very dramatic. And I was like, after I've done all that, but what I didn't realize is that in doing that, I erased all the things that we did, and the focal point would be on the fact that I was just keeping score. So I learned the first thing in fatherhood is not to keep score. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because you're going to get anything in return. And I got called to the table on that. I got frustrated. I lost my cool. And then I had to call a family meeting yesterday. And, you know, and when I did, I tried to, you know, be a little dramatic myself. And then what God hit me with this morning in Proverbs 17, because it's the 17th today, he hit me with the fact that if you return, you know, evil for evil, then you're just the same. And so it was a hard thing to be able to learn, because I wanted to teach my kids a lesson. I wanted to be the father, but that goes right into what we're talking about today as far as fatherhood, because fatherhood is not about leading, it's about following, but it's about following the right thing. And what is the right thing? Well, the one who created you most likely has a few of the answers. So we're going to dive into that today. And although it's June 17th, we're going back to June 16th, which is the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. Yesterday, it's 3,000-year-old wisdom. And it's amazing because he gives a blueprint for fatherhood in Proverbs 16. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
For those of you who don't know about the Vibe Room, it's coming up on July 23rd. It's a live version of the podcast. It's absolutely sold out now. It's in Salt Lake City at the Edison House. It is going to be unbelievable. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Sondor Real Estate Group, Packer Insurance with Patrick Packer, Sage Mortgage Advisors with Justin Williams, and Kevin Borland with Sondor Real Estate Group. And I want to thank them for their support. It's going to be an amazing night. We got Roy Tuscany, an incredible human being, has started a nonprofit foundation for spinal cord injury victims, and of which he is one. And he has this concept, which is adapt and destroy. He adapts to whatever situation that he has and destroys all the barriers around it. And he's doing that for spinal cord injury, victims throughout the world, creating these experiences. And he's got one of the top nonprofits in the world. So it's going to be amazing. You don't want to miss it. And if you don't have your tickets right now, you might have to miss it. We might have 1 or 2 that are still available. We can, not for purchase, but I hold those aside. So if you are wanting to go to the Vibe Room, reach out to me. It can be incredible that way. So, but when we were going through on this in Proverbs 16, it was real important to me because fatherhood has been a massive thing. I had an incredible father, great example in my life, but also, too, I want to let you know that nothing was perfect. And my pops was 19 years old when he had my brother. My mom was 16. He was 22 when he had me. He grew up in, with one of six and without, hot running water in the house. And he was a young guy when he passed away, only 68, a couple years ago. And, it wasn't that he was born in such a time where there wasn't these things available, but he went through a lot of, challenging times. And he never, he would say, I'm not moaning and complaining. They just were what they were. But I think of my pops as I refer to him. He had three genres in his life. One, he was dad, which was the kind of angry disciplinarian guy. I didn't realize why he was angry, but when I figured it out, I gave him a lot more grace than I did when I was a kid. He was laying a foundation because I believed that he knew that he was checking out a little early and that I was going to spend a lot of my time without him. So there was that dad. There was Pops, who became my best friend in the whole entire world. I talked to him every single day. He encouraged me like no other. He had more love in him and more light in him and more God in him, more Jesus in him than anyone that I've ever met in my life. He embodied it. He, if you were around him and you knew who my Pops was, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He didn't have to know what you did, but he could make you better at what you did no matter what it was. He was an absolute amplifier. And then there's third stage, which was Campa. And Campa was when he became a grandpa. That's what they called him. They couldn't pronounce grandpa. And they called him Campa. And Campa was just, unbelievably loving, forgiving. And me and my brother always asked, like, where was this when we were kids? But I guess you become the best father when you become a grandfather. And so, this one is special to me because this is my third Father's Day, I believe it is. It's my third Father's Day without my pops. And so spending this time and realizing how important fatherhood is. The example that we set, my pop said this way that, kids and video recorders, he would always say it like this. He would say, boy, what's the difference between a video recorder and a child? And I'd be like, what, Pop? And he'd say, the video recorder has a stop, a pause, a rewind, and a delete button, and the kid doesn't. They're recording every single thing that you do. And so as I went through my studies with fatherhood, I was like, oh man, I want to be the greatest leader of all time. I want to be this warrior for my family, for my wife, for all these things. But what I realized over time is that to be a good father, we got to be a good follower. And those things, leader and follower, generally don't come together. But we've got to be a good follower of the one who created us. And, he gives us the blueprint to be able to make that happen. And he did that in Proverbs 16, which I thought was amazing. So let's jump right into it. Proverbs 16, in verse 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, and 25, he just simply says, follow the leader. Follow the leader, which is him. And, when you go through Proverbs 16, to humans belong the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the proper answer of the tongue. And so we can have all these plans. You guys think about this. My wife says it all the time. Stick to the plan, but go with the flow. You can have all the greatest plans in the world, but all those go out the window, like Mike Tyson said, when you get punched in the mouth. And most likely, life's going to punch you in the mouth at some point. Some of you have just received a punch in the mouth. Some of you are recovering from that punch in the mouth, or some of you are just about to get punched in the mouth. That's generally where we're at. And when that happens, we realize that all the plans that we could ever have, most of the time, it doesn't turn out the way that we planned it. And I think when I realized that early on in life and in business and relationships, it worked out not better, but I guess I was more at peace with it. And that's where, so that first one is follow the leader, but make sure that you test the leader. If you test the leader here, 3,000-year-old wisdom, spend some time with God alone, you and him, no religion, no ritual, just you and him. And when you do, he'll show you the truth. He will. He definitely will. And in verse 5 and 18, it said, lay aside your pride. This is a hard one because, watch this, insecurity that will have the tendency to build pride, and that pride will build ego, right? And so most of the time, the ego, when that ego hits, it's challenging, right? Or you could reverse them a little bit if you wanted to. Insecurity leads to ego, and that ego leads to pride, or flip them around. But in any case, that insecurity, where it starts, is when we don't know. But what God wants us to know is that He's our Father. He's here, and He's never going to leave nor forsake you. So if you just got punched in the mouth, He's there with you. If you're recovering from the punch in the mouth, He's helping you recover. And if you're just about to get punched in the mouth, He can help you to brace for the impact. And so lay aside pride, and that's in verse 5 and 18. In verse 6 and 26, it's these two characteristics I find in fatherhood are probably the most important, which is love and faithfulness. Love and faithfulness. Love your wife, be faithful to her. Love your kids, be faithful to them. Love your God, be faithful to him. And when those things happen, it's absolute magic that happens, and that's in verse 5 and 18. And God is, I think, so incredible, because when He took this 3,000-year-old wisdom, literally, the book of Proverbs was written over 3,000 years ago, and it deals with things that we're dealing with today. And so what I love about this is I believe He has such a great personality and sense of humor. And I believe He gives us, in this, He said, here's the cheat code. The cheat code is in verse 7, verse 14, verse 17, verse 20, and verse 21. And in verse 7, it says, when the Lord takes pleasure in anyone's way, He causes even his enemies to make peace with them. In verse 14, a king's wrath is a messenger of death, but the wise will appease it. In verse 17, the highway of the upright avoids evil. Those who guard their ways preserve their lives. Verse 20, whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, and blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. And then in verse 21, and I circled this one, the wise in heart are called discerning, and gracious words will promote instruction. It's literally a cheat code. So if you, people always talk about the hacks in life. Well, the hack in life is to spend time with Him. And when we spend time with Him, then we'll respect His character or fear His character. He'll give us wisdom. From that wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge, He'll give us knowledge, because He won't give us knowledge unless we have the right use of it and we understand how to use it. And we talked about it in the episode before this in 456, where God's not going to bring a blessing unless you're prepared for it. So He's going to prepare you for the blessing. He's going to give you the desire. Then He's going to prepare you for the blessing. Then He's going to bring the blessing, and then you'll be prepared for it. You'll be able to sustain it. But you'll also know where it's coming from, and that's from Him. So imagine this. If we spend time with Him, then we'll respect His character, because His word and His actions is in line. When we respect His character or fear His character, those are interchangeable words. When we have the fear of God, it'll bring wisdom, which is the right use of knowledge. Then He'll bring knowledge. Then He'll bring understanding. Then He'll bring insight. Then He'll bring discretion. And then He'll bring discernment. And then He'll bring discipline. And then He'll bring strength. And it'll bring us right back to a relationship with Him. Not through religion, not through ritual, but just through a relationship. And so in verse 8, 16, and 19. And these ones are great for me because work your land is all over in Proverbs, and working your land just means that, you've heard the old ancient proverb of you're standing on an acre of diamonds. The guy, has a farm, and he wants to go and search the world in search of this, grandiose purpose. He sells his farm, and then he goes off and, searches for riches all over the world. And then he loses all his money, and he comes back home. And when he comes back home, he ends up buying his farm back. And when he's there, he's, digging in the dirt, and he finds an acre of diamonds that he was standing on the whole entire time. And this is, an old proverb, but also doesn't it sound very common or very similar to the prodigal son? And these kind of parables were there for us to be able to see ourselves in that situation. And I want to encourage every one of you that you're most likely standing on acres of diamonds, exactly where you're standing right now. So what God talks about in verse 8, verse 16, and verse 19 is just work your land. Don't chase fantasies, just work your land. And this is probably the hardest thing for me, because I get enticed with shiny things. I like shiny things, and so He has to keep me right on track. But if we want to be a good father, First, we'll know who to follow. We'll lay aside our pride. We'll have love and faithfulness. We'll follow the cheat code, and we'll simply work our land. And in verse 11 and 12, it talks about doing the right thing, honest scales. Like, you know if it's the right thing. You know that. I know that. When I sit with myself, now there's their justification. Like, I wanted an Oreo ice cream sandwich the other night. You know what I justified? You worked hard today. Was it the right thing to do? Probably not. I knew that, and I knew how I was going to feel afterwards, but I justified it. And so what it talks about in this is having honest scales. What are you weighing your decisions against? Do you have honest scales? We had a episode a couple ones back that talked about honest scales and how to understand if your scale is honest or not. And it's like with this one in verse 11, 12, and 27, it's just simply do the right thing. In verse 11, it says, honest scales and balances belong to the Lord, and the weights in the bag are of his making. So have honest scales. In verse 27, he says, a scoundrel plots evil, and on their lips is like scorching fire. Like, are you doing the right thing? And in verse 13, 21, and 24, it's speak truth. And in speaking truth, you'll speak life into people. Being discerning, meaning that you take thought of your thoughts, that you think about your thinking before you go in and move and have action. This is a thing that I fail at a ton. In verse 13, 21, and 24, it talks about speaking truth. If we want to be a great father, we got to speak truth. In verse 22 through 23, 22 and 23, it talks about prudence, the thought of the future. This will be a fountain of life. In verse 22 and 23, if we want to be a great father and we want to practice that fatherhood, we've got to have prudence. We got to think about the future, not just about right now and what feels good right now. In verse 32, it talks about patience and says that patience, to be a patient man is better than a strong warrior. This is so important, right? And so if you think about that part of it in every sense, if you're rushing into something, I just beware, right? And God he constantly gets on me about this. Is like, I'm not in a rush. Like, people are like, oh, I feel like I'm going to miss out on their opportunity. And what my pops would always say is the bus was built for you. So there's no way that you can miss it, because the only way that it's leaving the station is if you're on it. And so there's no opportunity that you're going to miss if you don't rush. Slow down and allow it to be. I had an experience years ago where I wanted to buy a car, and I was at the movie with my brother, and the car dealer called me and said, you need to make a decision. And I was like, Rob, what do you think, man? I need to make the decision. He said, what I think is we should watch the movie. So turn your phone off and enjoy the movie. The car will still be there in the morning, and if not, it wasn't for you. Slow down and practice patience. And then finally, in verse 33, it just says, follow the real leader. Now, there's so many leaders out there. There's so many people that will tell you, like, oh, you need to follow this and follow that. I got this method and I got that method. And believe me, even with the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, I want you to realize that I'm going back to wisdom, and I'm saying, like, don't listen to me. Don't listen to my side of it. Take it to the word. Weigh it against your relationship, your personal relationship with God. And if it's wrong, just strike it from the record. But what he calls us to do is follow the real leader. And in verse 33, this is what he says. It says, the lot is cast into the lap, but every decision is from the Lord. Follow the real leader. He has it all. And let me read this about fatherhood. Fatherhood is not to be studied and followed. True fatherhood is to be studied and followed, not accomplished. We have the greatest example, and when we get out of the way and give in, he will lead us. To lead as a father, we must learn to follow. He has given us the blueprint to be the father that our children long for. And the one thing that we are required to do to receive it is to simply spend time with him. He will give us our daily bread. And watch this. Fatherhood is all about following the leader, laying aside our pride, having love and faithfulness, understanding and applying the cheat code that he has given to us. Work your land, do the right thing, speak truth, have prudence, work patience. And then he reiterates it. Follow the real leader. I am always happy and my heart is always full when I get to do a podcast or even two. If you're loving the content, make sure you like, subscribe, comment and share it. But also we have playlists, which is the wisdom and the vibe. That's all the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. We also have you have to meet my friends, where I go live and I call my friends randomly. A lot of times I do it while they're at work, and we have incredible conversations. And then I have the interview side, where I interview some of the most iconic people in the world. So if you're loving that, check out all the episodes that way. I love you guys. This has been the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. And the challenge that I want to give to you is I want you to write these things down. Follow the leader, lay aside your pride, love and faithfulness, the cheat code, work your land, do the right thing, speak truth, prudence, patience, and follow the real leader. I want you to write those down, and I want you to score yourself based off of, are you doing those things? And not to say that you'll ever be a perfect father, but God has given us a blueprint, and if we follow it, it's unbelievable what can happen. But more than anything, he just wants to spend a little bit of time with you. So at least 1 minute silent, spend time with him today. Have a wonderful day. My name is Kelly Cardenas. This has been the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's 3,000-year-old wisdom, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting.